Hey guys, tonight we step into the kind of place where your neighbors know your name, your secrets, and the exact weight of the bread you bake every Thursday. A place where safety looks like conformity, and silence is the closest thing to armor. You're not cursed. You're not dangerous. You're not even particularly exciting. You're just a woman trying to live her life in a village that's very good at watching itself, and even better at punishing difference. And the bad news is, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your city and local time in the comments so I know when and where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It starts with a glance. One look. That's all. You're walking home with a basket of eggs when he passes by. The Reeves' son. You look up. He looks back. You don't smile. You don't curtsy. You don't drop your gaze like a proper woman is meant to. You just look, and that's enough. He keeps walking, but the glance stays. Later, you find out he told someone you stared him down like a beast. Another says he saw your eyes flicker red in the light. A third heard you mutter something under your breath. Never mind that it was the name of the chicken who'd just slipped from your arms. The rumors spread quickly. You don't hear them at first, not directly, but bread stops being left for you after Mass. The baker's wife no longer chats at the well. A boy pulls his hand back. When you reach to touch his scraped knee, you feel it in the air. It thickens when you enter a room. No one says anything, but everyone does, all because of a glance. Historians still argue whether medieval witch accusations were built on actual fear of the supernatural, or more often, simple social convenience. But here now, your life is turning for reasons no spellbook could explain. You didn't hex anyone. You didn't chant in Latin. You didn't even hum. You just existed wrong. You pass the Reeves' son again 2 days later. He doesn't look at you this time, but he tells the smith's apprentice that your garden has too many nettles, and the way they grow means something. The apprentice nods like he understands. That afternoon, the shepherd's youngest stumbles into the stream and cuts his head. You weren't there. You haven't been near him in days, but someone saw you walk past the stream that morning, and someone else says they heard you talking to a bird. You're 32. You live alone. You have a cat, a garden, and a face that doesn't bend easy into the shape other people want. You've survived more winters than most women your age. That, in itself, is suspicious. You've buried a husband, had no children. That, too, raises eyebrows. You walk upright. You speak clearly. You don't smile when you're supposed to. And now, when people see you, they lower their voices. That night, you sit by the fire and think this is how it begins. Not with an accusation, but with a pause. With someone hesitating just a moment too long before handing you a loaf. With someone choosing not to meet your eye at all. With the kind of silence that makes your skin itch. You light a candle. You stroke the cat's back. You hum a tune you don't remember learning. It's not magic. It's memory. But memory, too, is dangerous in a place like this. The next morning, you find 3 stones stacked neatly on your doorstep. A warning, or a message, or both. You leave them where they are. You don't touch them. You don't flinch. But inside, something in you curls tight, because you know what this means. You've heard the stories. You've whispered them in corners. And now, your name is slipping into one. The rumors tighten like a rope, not all at once, but inch by inch, tug by tug, until you can barely draw breath without feeling their pull. They say you know things, that your herbs aren't just for cost, but curses, that your cat listens too well, that your bread never molds fast enough, that your garden grows when no one else's does, and most damning of all, that you smile at storms. You stop going to market as often, because the silence is worse than the words, because you can handle shouting. It's the looking away that frays you. You harvest your yarrow early this year, dry it on strings behind your cottage, where the sun still touches the roofline. You press rosemary into oil. You grind dried sage into dust so fine it clings to your fingers like guilt. You do what you've always done, but now it means something else. Historians still argue whether midwives and herb women were more likely to be accused of witchcraft, or whether their status protected them until it didn't. You can guess which way the scale tips when things go wrong. And things do go wrong. A fever sweeps the village. Not many die, but one child does. The tanner's boy, barely 4. He had bad lungs, always had, but his mother had come to you once, for tea, for advice, for comfort. Now she won't meet your eyes. She avoids the path that leads past your gate, and the day of the funeral, someone scratches a symbol into your door, a circle, 3 slashes. You scrub it off before the sun rises. You tell no one. You don't sleep that night. You sit by the fire, cat in your lap, hands in your lap, thinking, it's not a matter of if, it's when. Because now, people need somewhere to put their fear, their grief, their questions. And you're too quiet, too alone, too different. You fit too easily into the shape they need. The Reeve's son is still whispering. You hear his name again and again, attached to yours, like an echo you didn't choose. He tells someone you watched the moon too long last week. You tell yourself that's not a crime, but it feels like one now. The next day, a girl knocks on your door. 11, maybe. Cheeks red, nose running. She asks for help. You hesitate, because now, help is dangerous. But you take her inside anyway. You brew elderflower, honey, thyme. She drinks, sleeps, wakes smiling. She leaves with a cough that's already softening. Later that week, her mother swears it was the priest's blessing that cured her. You don't argue. You don't say a word. You never do, because no one wants a woman who knows more than the men around her. No one wants a woman who is right too often. It makes them feel small, so you let them believe what they need to. You pour your tea. You tend your herbs. You keep your head down, but the glances grow heavier. The air changes when you walk into a room. You know the signs. You've seen them before in other villages, in other stories, in women who went missing or moved away, or got sick suddenly. You're not a stranger to this rhythm. You just hoped it wouldn't find you. One morning, you wake to find your gate broken, split down the middle. No footprints, just the wood cracked open like a jaw. You don't report it, because who would you report it to? The ones who listen are the ones who already believe. You fix it yourself, slowly, with hands that tremble more than you'd like. You tie rosemary to the post after. Not for protection. Not really. Just for clarity. If someone wants to come next time, they won't have to look for your house. You'll make it easy, because running would only confirm the story they've already written, and you won't hand them that ending. Not yet. You're sweeping your doorstep when the priest appears. Not the old one, the one who always looked a little afraid of you, who muttered blessings under his breath like they were spells. No, he died in winter, and they brought in a new one, younger, sharper, with eyes that don't dart. They linger. He steps onto your path like he owns it, cloak clean, hands tucked into his sleeves. You set your broom down, not because you're finished, because you don't want him to see your hands shaking. He doesn't say your name, just says, "There have been questions." You nod. You say, "There always are." His face doesn't move. He tells you there have been concerns, that some have wondered about your practices, that there's talk of improper rites. You want to laugh, because what are proper rites? Exactly. Which prayer said too early becomes dangerous? Which herb dried upside down is considered profane? But you don't ask. Instead, you say, "I make teas." He nods once. You talk to yourself. He says, "I'm the only one who listens." He does not smile. The conversation ends without ending. He leaves you with nothing. Not guilt, not accusation, just a sense that the circle has drawn closer. And now the center is you. That evening, someone throws something at your door. You don't open it to check. You wait until morning. It's a chicken's foot tied with twine. You burn it with the morning bread. Not because it's cursed, because you won't give it power. You visit the stream that day, not to wash but to think. You sit where the reeds bend low, and the frogs sing like old women, trying to remember lullabies. You watch the water slide past, gentle and endless, and you think, how many other women sat like this, wondering if today would be the day they stopped being safe. The wind carries the answer in whispers you can't quite understand, but the feeling stays. You pick 3 stones from the stream, carry them home in your apron, place them on your windowsill, not as protection, as reminders. You are still here. You still choose. But even you can't ignore the signs now. The village turns colder. You see it in how people walk. Not faster, wider, as if proximity itself might damn them. The girl who used to bring you daisies now hides behind her mother. Your name is no longer spoken in full. It's her. That one. You hear the word witch once. Not shouted, just spoken, softly, as a certainty. You think of all the things you've done in your life. Brewed tea, tended wounds, sang to yourself, healed when you could, grieved when you couldn't. You wonder which one was the mistake. Historians still argue whether witchcraft accusations were rooted more in gender or power or just proximity to bad luck. You don't need books to know the answer. It was never about what you did. It was always about what you were. A woman. Alone. Unapologetic. You begin preparing. Not for confession. Not for escape. But for remembrance. You stitch your name into your apron hem. You bury a bundle of lavender and rosemary near the back step. You tuck notes into the tree hollow behind the garden. Names, herbs, warnings, recipes. Not for you. For whoever comes next. Because someone always does. A girl with a voice too loud. A widow with a stare too steady. A child with a cat who won't leave her side. You won't stop what's coming, but you'll leave the map. The sky darkens early that night. You sit by the fire. Your cat curls at your feet. You hum, quietly, and for the first time in weeks, you sleep. Because when morning comes, you'll need your strength. Morning arrives heavy, not stormy, just expectant. Like the village has made up its mind, and the air is holding its breath. You go about your routine. Grind herbs. Fold linen. Pour water over the cat's bowl. You even whistle a little, as if the sound might change the shape of the day. It doesn't. You know the knock is coming before it lands. 3 hard raps on the door. Not a visitor. An arrival. You open it slowly. 3 men. The priest. The Reeve's son. And a third, unfamiliar, wearing the badge of a scribe. You note the parchment in his hand, the ink-stained fingers. You note the way no one says good morning. The priest clears his throat. You've been summoned. You don't ask where. You know. The church steps. The town square. The fire pit. Take your pick. They don't say the word trial, but it hangs there, just behind their teeth. You nod once. Say nothing. Turn back inside as if to gather something, but really just to breathe. Your cat meows. You stroke her head and say, "Stay here." She follows you anyway. Outside, the villagers have gathered. Not many, but enough. You walk with the men, not between them, behind, because that's what the guilty do. The church steps are empty, but someone's placed a stool near the square. It's for you. You do not sit. The questions begin immediately. Do you renounce the devil? Have you made offerings in secret? Did you curse the tanner's son? Did you cause the storm on the feast day? You answer only once. I mend things. The priest presses harder. Mentions herbs by name as if they're weapons. Mentions your solitude as if it's confession. Mentions the girl you once healed, who later broke her leg. You don't flinch. The Reeve's son looks smug. The scribe writes everything, even your silence. Someone spits in the dust near your foot. You do not look down, because looking down is what they want, what they expect. Historians still debate whether these proceedings were trials in any meaningful sense, or simply performances with foregone conclusions. You're living proof it's the latter. There is no advocate, no argument, only accusation and an audience. The priest finally says it, which the crowd doesn't gasp. They already knew. They just needed someone to say it out loud. You look at the sky. It is blue, unbothered. Somewhere, a bird calls once. You think, I have been called worse. I have survived worse. You turn to the girl watching from behind her mother. You do not know her name, but she's the one who brought you eggs last summer. She's the one who tied a ribbon around your cat's tail when she thought no one was looking. She is watching now, really watching, not with fear, but with fire. You hold her gaze a beat too long. The priest asks if you'll confess. You say, to what? He lists your crimes again. You smile, softly. I kept people warm. I kept people fed. I helped when no one else would. And they hate you for it, because you were not supposed to survive without their permission, because you were not supposed to thrive on the edge of their world and expect dignity. They bring rope. You do not struggle, because you know what this is. You've always known, and still, something in you remains unbowed. The stool creaks beneath you. The sun is too bright. Your hands are bound. Your name is already being spoken in past tense. But you are not gone. Not yet. And the girl is still watching. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. They place the stake at the edge of the square, far enough from the chapel to maintain appearances, but close enough to remind everyone who approved it. You are led barefoot across packed earth. The crowd has grown. Men, women, children. Some brought bread. Some brought stones. Some brought nothing but eyes. You feel every gaze. Some curious. Some grim. A few almost apologetic. But no one steps forward. Not yet. They tie your hands. Not tightly. Not gently. As if you're already halfway gone. The wood is stacked in a loose circle. Logs, twigs, shavings. You think they've done this before. The priest recites something, loud enough to carry, but not so loud that it sounds like pleading. You catch every third word. Sin, fire, cleansing. You shift your weight. The rope scratches your wrists. You wonder what time it is. You wonder if your cat is hiding under the house. You hope she stays there. A man steps forward with a torch. You almost laugh, because it's the Reeve's son. Of course it is. He lights the pile like he's starting a harvest bonfire. Like this is just another chore. The flame catches quickly. Too quickly. Someone knew how to stack it for speed. You feel the heat begin. And still, you do not cry out. Because that, too, would be for them. The priest says, "May God have mercy." The scribe records the moment. The fire climbs. You keep your eyes on the girl. The one behind her mother. The one who hasn't stopped watching. You want her to remember. Not the fire. Not the words. You. The way you stood. The way you didn't flinch. The way you held your name like a shield when the world tried to set it on fire. Historians still argue whether the women burned as witches believed in their own guilt, or simply knew that the truth wouldn't save them. You know the answer. You always knew, because guilt was never the point. It was power, and your only crime was having too much of it. In your words, your silence, your hands. You close your eyes, but only for a moment. The fire crackles like laughter. You breathe. Still, even now, The rope slips slightly. Your fingers move. Not enough to free you, just enough to feel. Because even here, even now, you are yours. And that is something they cannot take. The heat climbs higher. Voices rise. Some cheer. Some pray. Some pretend not to feel anything at all. But the girl, she steps forward. Just one step. Her mother pulls her back. But not fast enough. She saw. She saw you. And you know, in the deepest part of yourself, that she will remember. Not the smoke. Not the ash. But the defiance. The dignity. And maybe one day, when her own name is whispered in the wrong tone, she'll remember how you stood, and she won't kneel. The sky turns grey by the time the embers cool. Not a storm, just the dull, indifferent kind of overcast that makes the whole world feel muffled. The crowd thins slowly, like regret. No one speaks to each other as they leave. The priest blesses the ground, where the stake still stands, then turns his back on it before the last whisper of smoke vanishes. The Reeve's sun disappears without looking back. You are no longer there, but you are, in the scent clinging to their clothes, in the hush that follows a joke that lands too hard, in the awkward shift of someone wondering if they clapped at the wrong moment. You don't haunt them like a ghost. You haunt them like a question, and it's louder than they want it to be. The girl returns at dusk, alone. She walks to the stake, now just a blackened post, and presses her hand to it like a door that once led somewhere. She doesn't cry. She doesn't pray. She just stands, long enough for the wind to notice her, long enough to be seen. She picks something from the ground, charcoal or a nail or a piece of your thread. She wraps it in linen and leaves. She will carry that with her for years, in her pocket, in her palm, hidden in a seam, and she will not forget. Historians still argue whether witch trials were about justice, fear, or spectacle, whether they were local flare-ups or institutional rot, whether the people believed or simply needed to believe. But none of that explains what happens next, because something changes. Not everything, not all at once, but something. The woman who used to cross the square to avoid your gate now leaves a sprig of thyme on your windowsill. A boy carves a spiral into a fence post. Someone, no one knows who, plants rosemary on the patch where the stake once stood. The priest still preaches, but softer. The scribe stops taking notes during confessions. And the girl, she starts asking questions, dangerous ones. She asks why they burned you. She asks why the herbs that helped her brother are now forbidden. She asks why only women seem to be accused, and no one has good answers, because the fire answered nothing. It only revealed how much you threaten them, not with spells, not with curses, but with certainty, with knowing what they didn't, with healing when they couldn't, with refusing to be smaller than you were made to be. You survive in her voice, in the way she speaks her mind, in the way she stops apologizing for being curious, in the way she touches sage leaves with reverence, not fear. And the cat, she's still alive. She visits the girl's window sometimes, sleeps beside the fire, dreams perhaps of a woman who once knew how to stir with both hands and silence. You're gone, but you've been planted, and what they meant to erase has only rooted deeper, because fire does not destroy everything. Sometimes it clears the way. Spring returns with uneasy silence. The square grows green again. The burned patch fades beneath new grass, and someone eventually removes the charred stake, though no one says who. It doesn't matter, the ground remembers. You do too, even if you're not there anymore, because now you're part of everything. In the quiet pause before someone speaks, in the wary glance exchanged between women, when the priest raises his voice just a little too high, in the bundles of herbs tied a little tighter, passed a little quicker, shared not with words, but with nods, the girl, the one who watched, starts visiting the old midwife more often. She pretends it's for chores. She brings eggs, helps with salt, asks questions about belladonna like she's asking about baking. The midwife plays along. They both know better. One afternoon, the girl brings a ribbon. Red. She says it's for luck. She ties it to the cat's collar. The cat purrs. It's not a spell. Not really. But it feels like one. Because some magics are just actions done with intention, with memory, with defiance. You'd have liked her. You watch the girl begin to notice things. The way the merchant always closes his door when the tanner's widow passes. The way the priest never visits the sick unless someone is watching. The way some women stop attending mass, not loudly, not rebelliously, just gradually. She doesn't speak up. Not yet. But you feel the tension in her chest when she kneels at the altar, and how tightly she presses her hands together, like she's praying for permission to be angry. Historians still argue whether burnings stopped because the church softened, or because the people grew tired of fire. You think it was neither. You think it was women like her, watching, waiting, learning when to stand up without drawing flames, when to move in the open, and when to leave messages in ash and time. There's a day in midsummer when a boy trips in the square, falls hard, blood on his chin. The villagers freeze, waiting to see who helps. The girl steps forward, rips cloth from her apron, cleans the wound, speaks softly. The boy stops crying. Someone mutters, "She reminds me of," and stops, because to finish the sentence would be to name you, and to name you would be to admit you mattered. So they don't. But the girl hears it. She carries that half sentence like a torch. One night, she wakes to a dream she doesn't understand. A fire. A woman at the center. Not screaming. Just standing. Smoke in her hair. Ash in her fists. The girl wakes with tears on her cheeks, and does not wipe them away. She begins writing things down. Not books. Not spells. Just fragments. A recipe for fever. A prayer with no saint's name. A question. What if power lives in silence because we weren't allowed to shout? She buries them in the wall. Not for now. For later. For whoever needs them next. Because she knows, as you knew, they will always need someone to blame. And someone will always choose to live outside the lines drawn for her. You weren't the first. She won't be the last. Because of you. She'll be ready. Summer deepens. The sun hangs heavy in the sky, pressing down like judgment. Bees hum. Bread rises too fast. Tempers do too. It's the season when things spoil quickly. Milk, meat, moods. And that's when the whispers start again. Not about you, not directly. This time, it's a different name. The midwife. Too many stillbirths. Someone says, the babies don't cry loud enough. The mothers look hollow. Maybe she's too old. Maybe she's grown careless. Or maybe she knows too much. The girl hears all of it. She carries water to the midwife's hut twice that week. She sits and listens. Doesn't argue. Just listens. Then she says, they're starting again. The midwife nods. She knows. She remembers your name. She remembers your fire. She remembers how quickly warmth can become fuel in a place like this. The girl doesn't say your name aloud, but she feels it in her bones, in the way her hands tremble when someone glares too long, in the way she walks faster when the priest's shadow crosses hers, in the way her dreams have shifted from flame to flight, not running away, rising. She asks the midwife if it's true that nettles can protect a doorway. Yes. And salt at a windowsill? Yes. And 3 knots in red thread? Only if you mean it. She starts wearing red. Nothing flashy. Just a cord around her wrist. A ribbon in her braid. A bit of thread sewn into the hem of her shift. Enough to be seen if someone knows how to look. The girls notice first. Then the women. It spreads quietly. Not a rebellion. A return to the things that kept them safe before someone told them they were dangerous. To the little rituals. The silent defenses. The knowledge passed from hand to hand. Never spoken too loudly. Never written down where the wrong eyes might see. Historians still debate whether these customs had any real power, but you know they did, because you're still here, in their hands, their threats, their defiance. The girl starts planting herbs, not just practical ones, not just thyme for coughs or yarrow for wounds. She plants memory, rosemary, mugwort, rue, plants no one talks about in the open. She places stones around them in careful shapes. She waters them with rain caught in a bowl carved from bone. She doesn't say what she's doing. She doesn't have to. One day, a boy from the Reeves household throws a stone at her cat. It misses, but it's close enough. The girl walks up to him, says nothing, just looks, like you did, long and level. He laughs, nervous, then walks away. He never throws again. The cat follows her that night, sleeps curled by her door, and in the morning, the girl wakes to find 3 stones on her doorstep, stacked neatly. She smiles, because she knows what it means now. Not fear. Inheritance. They tried to bury you. They didn't realize you were seed. And now the field is blooming again. Autumn arrives in gold and bone. Leaves fall like confessions. The wind stings a little. Bread rises slower. Everything feels like it's turning inward. The village quiets, not from peace, but from watching, waiting. The harvest was thin this year. The priest says it's punishment. No one asks for what, but everyone starts looking for a reason, a scapegoat, a flaw in the pattern. And the girl, they look at her now, not loudly, just often. She walks past, and conversations pause. She touches a plant, and someone mutters. She leaves the chapel early one Sunday, and the priest's voice rises like smoke behind her. Some among us forget what obedience protects us from. She doesn't turn, but she hears it. She tells no one, but that night she unties the red thread from her wrist and reties it higher where it cannot be seen. The midwife sees what's happening. She tries to intervene, tries to remind the village who the girl is, who raised her, whose medicine saved whose child last winter. But truth is not louder than fear, and fear is hungry. One morning, the bread doesn't rise, the cat goes missing, the water tastes of ash. No one says her name, but everyone thinks it, even the girl. She feels it. Not guilt, not confusion, just the slow dread of understanding that something sacred in her is now officially inconvenient. And that means she's next. She visits the edge of the village before dawn, where the trees grow thick and the moss doesn't ask questions. She kneels beside a stone that never had a name carved into it. Yours. She presses her palm flat against it, and she remembers. The fire, the silence, the strength. You speak to her now, not in words, but in certainty. She hears. They are not afraid of your power. They are afraid of their need for it. She breathes. She stands. She returns to the village. Not faster, not slower, just ready. Because the trial won't be fair. It never is. But it will be a stage. And this time, she knows the script. Historians still argue whether the women who were tried ever really had followers. They missed the point, because sometimes the fire didn't kill the witch. It just taught the next girl how to light her own. That night, she dreams of you, but not bound, not burning, dancing, smoke in your hair, ash on your skin, laughing, not cruel, not angry, just free. And when she wakes, she laughs too, quietly, and means it. The summons arrives the next morning. Not parchment, not words, just a knock. 3 raps, not hard, but final. She answers the door, already dressed. Hair braided, shoes on, red thread looped behind one ear like an earring. The woman waiting doesn't speak, just gestures toward the square. This is how it starts. The girl knows the rhythm. You taught it to her, not with instructions, but by living it. She walks through the village like someone who belongs, not like a prisoner, not like a warning, just a woman with a spine still straight. And that, of course, is what they hate most. The square isn't full, but it feels crowded. The priest stands beside the stake. Yes, there is a stake, already prepared, just in case. Because once someone like you burns, they make sure the next one can be lit faster. The midwife is there too, watching, mouth tight, hands clenched. The Reeve's son stands a little too close, smiling. The girl ignores them all. She steps onto the low platform they've made. No chains. Not yet. But the rope is nearby. Everyone sees it. The priest begins. He lists her unnatural behaviors. The herbs. The silence. The ribbon. The cat, who returned just yesterday, tail singed, but head held high. The child she comforted. The woman she helped die gently, without prayer. Each word drips like wax. She says nothing. She just listens. Because this is not a debate. It is theatre, and she knows her role. Historians still argue whether women at witch trials ever really fought back, or whether silence was their only defense. The truth: silence was never weakness. It was control, because they expect tears. They expect fear. But this unnerves them. The scribe scribbles nervously. The Reeve's sun shifts. The crowd rustles, unsure if they're here for a verdict or a confession. The priest, impatient now, demands, "Do you deny the devil?" She tilts her head, says, "I deny you." Gasps ripple. The cat yells once from under the platform, and the rope stays on the ground because the midwife steps forward, says, "She is no witch," and someone else quietly agrees. Then another, then a third, and suddenly the priest doesn't look so sure of the fire, because fire, once fed, doesn't choose sides. The girl bends, picks up the rope, hands it back to the Reeve's son. Not a threat, a gesture, a choice. She walks down from the platform. No one stops her, because no one is sure what happens next. And that's new. That's yours. You didn't live to see this, but you built it. Not in books, not in sermons, in silence, in strength, in the way you held your ground, even as it burned under you. The girl doesn't leave the village. She stays. She plants more herbs. She speaks when she wants to. She visits the midwife often, and when other girls come to her with questions, she answers, carefully, but clearly. And when someone new whispers, "Witch," she smiles and says, "Not yet." Autumn ends with a frost so sharp it splits the ground. The leaves are gone now. The fields are stiff and still. Smoke curls thinly from every chimney. The village is quieter than usual. Not peaceful, just colder in every sense of the word. But she walks the same path every morning, from the well to the edge of the woods, basket on her hip, cat at her heel, herbs bundled in her sleeves. She speaks to no one, and everyone watches her. Still, because once you are seen as something dangerous, it never fully leaves you. It just changes shape. The priest avoids her now. The Reeve's son pretends not to notice her. The girl isn't feared anymore, but she is not trusted. Not by everyone, and that's fine. She doesn't need everyone. She has the midwife, the widow who brings her pears, the children who come for tea and stories, and quietly whispered dreams of flying, or fighting, or running away. She becomes something else. Not witch, not healer, just herself. And that, more than anything, is what makes her untouchable. Because she answers to no one. Because she's free. That freedom scares them. Not the herbs. Not the cat. not even the stories. It's the freedom. The way she walks without apology. The way she knows things and doesn't offer them unless asked. The way she belongs to no one and owes nothing. She builds a new door for her home, carves a spiral into the frame. Not a spell, not protection, just remembrance of you, of all of you, the ones who stood alone, the ones who bent but did not break, the ones who burned so others could choose their own fire. Historians still argue whether women like her were ever truly safe, and she knows the answer. No, but she also knows that safety was never the goal. The goal was survival, and more than that, continuance. To keep the thread going, to whisper the names, to leave signs in doorways and patterns in stitches, and meaning in the shape of the garden rose. She writes now, not books, not spells, just thoughts, scraps of truth. She tucks them into tree hollows and hems and under stones. One simply reads, "You were not wrong. They just weren't ready." Another says, "They called you witch, but you were light." And another, smaller still, "I saw you. Winter comes. She's ready. Firewood is stacked. The kettle sings. A girl from the next village comes knocking, scared, curious, holding a basket of strange herbs and stranger questions. The woman smiles, says, "Come in." The girl hesitates, then steps across the threshold. Another one saved, another one found, another thread in the tapestry, another page in the story they never wanted told, but that lives anyway, because you lived, because you dared, because when the world said kneel, you asked, why? Because when they lit the fire, you looked them in the eye, and now you flicker in every candle lit against the wind. The days grow short, the light fades fast, chased by wind and snow and breath. You can see the village moves slower now, bundled tight in wool and routine. But she doesn't. She walks through winter like it's familiar, because it is, because she remembers the kind of cold that isn't weather, the kind that creeps in from silence, from suspicion, from being watched. And this frost, this is nothing. She leaves dried herbs on doorsteps. No notes, no explanation, just the right plants wrapped in twine. Thyme for breath, elder for fever, chamomile for rest. Some are accepted, some are ignored. One is returned. Still, she gives, not because they've earned it, but because she has. The girl from the next village returns often now. She listens more than she speaks, but when she talks, her voice has roots. She's seen too much already, and yet somehow still hopes, still believes in good endings, or at least better ones. They sit by the fire, they read the smoke, they mend with quiet hands. They build something that isn't quite family, isn't quite friendship. It's lineage, a choice to be something more than what the world allows. One day, a child comes crying at the door, small, wild-eyed, covered in mud and fear. "My brother's dying," she says. They won't go to the priest. They're afraid. The woman nods. She doesn't ask why. She simply gathers what she needs: water, herbs, cloth, thread, firelight. and follows. The boy lives. Barely. No one thanks her, but the child returns the next morning with a single apple and a folded piece of cloth with your symbol sewn into it. Not perfectly, but recognizably. She hangs it above the hearth, not because she needs it, because someone else might. Historians still argue whether magic ever existed, whether the women accused had real power, or just knowledge, whether the flames silenced truth or spread it. They don't see the difference. She does. She knows that magic was never in the fire, or the words, or the rituals. It was in the refusal to kneel, to apologize, to forget. She teaches the girl from the next village to grow things in winter, to read the way moss clings to stone, to trust her dreams, but only after 3 nights. She tells stories, softly, never fully, always with space for the listener to find themselves inside. And as the year ends, she carves your name into wood, not a grave marker, a doorway, because some names aren't meant to be buried. They're meant to be walked through. The snow melts like it's apologizing, slowly, reluctantly, with a hint of shame for how long it stayed. The ground is soft beneath your feet again, and the village stretches in cautious movements, animals blinking in weak light, shutters creaking open one hinge at a time. The girl plants seeds, not just herbs, vegetables, flowers, things not meant to be used but enjoyed. She tends them carefully. She's learned that beauty is resistance too. You taught her that, not with words, but with the way you braided your hair, even on the day they called you guilty. The way you sat upright as the flames rose. The way you met their fear with stillness. Now she teaches others. Quietly. A boy with clever fingers comes to her for poultices. A young woman with trembling hands brings her a broken ring and says nothing. She helps anyway. A widow asks for something to help her sleep, and the girl says, "Of course," and means it. She walks through the village with her head high now, not because she feels safe, because she knows how to endure. The priest watches from the chapel steps. He no longer preaches about witches, at least not publicly, but the sermons are colder, tighter, louder when she's within earshot. She never flinches. She simply walks by. Sometimes she hums, not a tune anyone recognizes, something older, wordless, a lullaby of defiance. The midwife grows sick. Old bones, cold lungs. The girl stays by her side for 3 nights, holds her hand until it's still, washes her body, sings her name. Burial is quiet, but not empty. A circle of women stands in silence, no priest, no formal prayer, just presence. They plant rosemary at her head. Later, one of them asks if the girl will take her place. She says no. Then yes. Then only if I can do it my way. And they nod, because they understand. Because power given is never as strong as power claimed. She does not move into the midwife's home. She builds her own, at the edge of the trees, windows facing east, door always open, when she chooses. Historians still argue whether women like her were rebels or relics, but they miss the truth. She is a bridge, from the women burned to the ones who will never be touched. And every time she crushes rosemary between her fingers, or ties a red thread around a wrist, or teaches a child the difference between healing and hiding, you are there, in her voice, in her shadow, in her steadfastness. You didn't survive, but you endured, and she is what survival looks like. The forest begins to reclaim its scent. Moss returns like memory. Ferns uncurl with ancient ease. The paths she walks are soft now, not worn from fear, but traveled with intention. She no longer glances behind her, not because the world is safe, but because she's stopped expecting safety to be a condition of movement. She walks anyway. She gathers anyway. She teaches anyway. A mother sends her son to learn stitches. Another brings her daughter to ask questions no one else dares answer. They come in pairs, mostly, not because they fear her, but because they want to understand. She keeps a book now, just a small one. Leather cover, hand-stitched spine. Her handwriting is messy at first, then steadier. Not spells, not doctrine, just truth. Rosemary for clarity, yarrow for courage, silence for power. A smile, when chosen, is armor. Grief does not make you weak. Anger is not the same as danger. The book has no title, because naming it would limit what it's allowed to hold. It lives in her house, tucked behind jars and threads and dried apple skins. The children ask if they can see it. She lets them, but only after they've earned the trust. Because knowledge is sacred, yes, but it's also earned. Historians still argue whether women of the village ever had this kind of autonomy. You know better, because your story didn't end at the fire. It started something. A legacy passed like a whisper that grew legs and kept walking. The girl, the woman now, receives visitors from farther villages. Curious ones, worried ones, girls like her, some bruised, some just different. She makes tea. She listens. She tells them her story, but never all of it, because stories are like nettle. You don't hand it over raw. You teach them how to touch it properly. She lights candles now not for protection, but remembrance. Some with names, some without. There's one for you, always lit on the day. The frost comes early, always set in the window, flame flickering behind glass, like a heartbeat that refused to be put out. And when people ask her who you were, she just says, the first, and lets the silence fill the space where your voice once lived. Not absence, not grief. Honor. The trees are taller than they used to be. Or maybe she's just smaller now, worn down in a way that feels more sculpted than broken. Time has carved lines into her hands like riverbeds, and she has stopped trying to smooth them out. They're her map. The children she once taught now bring their own. She sees them at her door, arms full of questions, herbs, babies, sorrow, and joy. They call her many things now. Wise woman, mother of none, and of everyone. Firekeeper, healer, witch, though now it's said with a grin or reverence, or both. She doesn't correct them. She doesn't need to. She knows what she is, and she knows what you were, because your story, once a warning, became a torch. It passed from hand to hand, not in flame, but in memory, not in fear, but in firelight. Every girl who ever asked why, or dared to look up, or refused to kneel, carried it. And now, this woman at the end of the forest, she is its inheritance. She still keeps the thread, red, always. She still keeps the door cracked. She still teaches, when asked gently. She still keeps the cat, older now, always near. There's a new apprentice too, barely grown, freckled, sharp-eyed, wants to know everything now. The woman just smiles, offers a broom, a mortar, a list. Start here, she says, because wisdom is not in the knowing, it's in the doing. And when the girl grumbles, she smiles again, because she remembers, because she was her once, because you were. The hearth glows, the kettle sings. She pulls a jar from the shelf and opens it. Inside, ash, just a pinch. You, not to grieve, to honor. She sprinkles it on the doorstep, not for protection, but for presence. So when the wind stirs, it carries you with it, into the house, into the hearts of everyone who enters, into the story that never ended. Because you weren't just burned, you were planted, and look what grew. Wind down 300 words, the night settles gently now. No trials, no flames, no watchers behind curtains, just the rustle of wind through dried herbs, the creak of a worn chair, the hush of a sleeping cat. The woman at the edge of the forest breathes deeply, the scent of pine and rosemary wrapping around her like a blessing. She moves slowly through the house, lighting one last candle. Your candle, a flame so small it might be mistaken for nothing, but to her it is everything. It is memory and courage and defiance. It is you. She places the candle on the windowsill, where it will shine until morning, where someone, anyone, might see it from the dark and know someone made it through. She sits, fingers curled around a mug, eyes half closed, heart wide open. The wind hums a lullaby at the threshold. The fire cracks, low and kind. She whispers a name, your name, and it does not hurt anymore. It heals, because some stories don't need to be rewritten. They just need to be retold. You were not the villain. You were never the mistake. You were the seed, the spark, the start. So rest now. Let the quiet hold you. Let the warmth find you. Let the story sleep beside you, because you were fire, and now you are light. End of script. Sweet dreams.